Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on Kraz, playing as the Forces of the Dark Elves against the Forces of the Empire. And as you may be able to tell, this build here is something that's a little off, a little different. And it's a build I was inspired by to try because I ran into it on ladder and I thought it was an interesting idea, running a bunch of Sisters and Witch Elves and trying to make it work against Empire. And I was curious what the idea behind it was, and wanted to give it a shot. So either way, going over the comp here, for my Lord, I'm going to be rocking Malekith. I think he's still a very strong choice. Obviously, keeping him on a cold one, much easier to protect him if your opponent happens to go with guns and a very Lord sniping heavy build. He, of course, does have Gaze of Malice to disrupt enemy formations and missiles. Stand your ground, of course. Great for keeping your troops in the fight. Soul Stealer, basically a must, and Chill Wind for deleting lines of infantry. We also do have Spiteful Concentration, which is nice for this mostly non-AP line. Now for the rest of the army, we do have 4 units of Witch Elves, one of which is the Sisters of the Singing Doom, giving me a little bit of terror, which is nice, because otherwise this build doesn't really have any way of instilling that. And these ladies will tear through Empire State troops pretty effectively. And they are backed by multiple units of Sisters of Slaughter. I did bring 3 units of them. Going to be looking to just mulch whatever Empire frontline there is relatively quickly. Of course, there is a big threat from Heavy Cav, and this is where things get interesting. The build I ran into actually didn't bring any Cold One Knights, and so I kind of want to replicate that here, try it out. We brought some Dark Riders with shields. These guys are going to act as a bit of a screen to soak up enemy charges, and behind that we've got multiple Dark Riders with Spear Crossbows. We're going to be trying to poke the Empire player down, poke away at their Heavy Cav, their Skirmish Cav, that sort of thing, and hopefully buy ourselves some time that way. And if my opponent does decide to charge in and engage, we of course can rampage them with the Sisters and the Witch Elves. Now for the Empire build here, we are going to be seeing Boris Todbringer taking to the skies. He is coming in with the Reichland Runefang, or sorry, the Midland Runefang, of course, for those heals. He also does have the White Cloak of Ulrich. No Curse the Weak, surprisingly, which I think is still a nice ability, just for how cheap it is. But a Foe Seeker in there as well for Vigor. Besides that, we do have a Lore of Deathcaster here with Fate of Buna and Spirit Leech. Not a huge fan of Fate of Buna, even against Dark Elves, but maybe you can get some value out of it. I don't really think there's any units Dark Elves can bring where Fate of Buna is super valuable, but perhaps just one of the backup spell here in case Spirit Leech didn't have much value. And Life Leeching, of course, to get that extra one's magic. Besides that, we do have a single Hellblaster making up the only static artillery piece, and it is already teeing off on my poor Dark Riders with Crossbows. Interesting choice here, but there is quite a hefty front line to protect it. We've got Sigmar's Sons, we've got 2 units of Flatulence, which are going to be a problem for Witch Elves, and then a whole bunch of Spearmen with shields. And these guys, of course, can hold the line relatively effectively and just stall pretty well. Besides that, we do have a whole bunch of cavalry, some Empire Knights in the back here, as well as multiple Knights of the Blazing Sun, providing a pretty hefty sort of contingent there. Some Outriders, as well as Pistoliers, who are going to be looking to harass and be a bit of a nuisance. Now, unfortunately, the Hellblaster there is going to zone off my Dark Riders, and that, in turn, is going to expose these Witch Elves to some Pistolier harass, which is not ideal. We were going to try to zone them back here with the Dark Riders, but unfortunately, the Witch Elves are already taking a bit of a pounding. You can see the Sisters of the Singing Doom getting torn to shreds by that very annoying Hellblaster. And although their leadership is very high, so it's going to be pretty tough to break them. 90 baseline, I believe, on these ladies. And of course, the leech formation makes them a bit beefier. The fact that their shield saved on the Sisters of Slaughter here isn't going to help them against the Hellblaster, plus their relatively low base HP is definitely going to make them vulnerable. Knights of the Blazing Sun here, in the meantime, trying to look for an opening just to charge in, do some damage, especially to Sisters of Slaughter. Unfortunately, a bit of a slip up there on my part, and I allowed the Dark Riders to get caught as I was focused on this engagement here, where Boris is going to dive in alongside Knights of the Blazing Sun. We are immediately pouring in fire, Dark Riders collapsing in on them, and Malekith coming in, but unfortunately, Terror kicks in, and these boys are going to rout, which is a bit of a mess. Fortunately, though, Rampage on Knights of the Blazing Sun does keep them netted in place and allows the Dark Riders to do some work. Though, unfortunately, I was focused on Boris and probably misplay. I should have focused on Knights of the Blazing Sun and removing them from play. Outriders, in the meantime, being a nuisance, we do see a Fate of Buna going down the Sisters of Slaughter. So, interesting choice there. It definitely does a lot of damage. These ladies don't have a lot of baseline, but I think they could still squeak this win out. They just have such good combat stats. These ladies over here just getting torn apart in the meantime from behind by the Outriders, while the Witch Elves do sort of pile through the front line here, unfortunately getting stacked a little bit on top of each other as they get into the Flagellants. And that's definitely not ideal, because it allows the Hellblaster to keep firing away. We're not really able to shut it down in a timely manner. That does mean my opponent's just getting way too much value here, especially because I've clumped this hard. Dark Riders with their bad range, kind of hard to... They kind of tend to clump a lot, in my experience, unfortunately. And although I do get a few pot shots here on the Hellblaster, it's just not doing enough damage, and a bit of a mess, though we finally do breach the flanks, and the Witch Elves are going to be pouring on through. Now, balance of power is very much in my opponent's favor, but we do still have a few tricks up our sleeve. We do have Malekith, of course, as well as Dark Riders with the Crossbows, who I am now trying to shift around, trying to get them out of range of the Hellblaster and in on the Knights of the Sun. And it's definitely a hairy situation. My opponent still has a lot of firepower here. He does have Empire Knights, and he's just able to whittle me down. It's very difficult to try to protect everything. Sister Slaughter do breach the Spearmen here. Murderous Brows, of course, helping a bunch. Witch Elves, they're getting whittled down a bit. But, of course, the Unbreakable Sigmar Sons will be a major pain in the rear, even with the bonus versus infantry the Witch Elves have. We are going to be able to rampage the artillery crew here, which is going to make it a bit easier to drag them down and kill them. But ultimately, things definitely not looking ideal. Balance of power, as mentioned before, very, very grim. We are going to cast Gaze of Malice. One of the big problems of this game, I didn't have great targets for Gaze of Malice most of the time. Some of the infantry, I could have tried casting on spears there, but nothing too amazing. Sisters of Slaughter here tearing up the Outriders, which is nice. Ladies do get in on these guys, and my opponent's slipping up his micro a little bit, because the Outriders are actually taking quite a lot of casualties. Sisters do hit fairly hard at 38 weapon strength, and Outriders don't have much armor or defense of any sort, so they are getting dragged down despite these ladies not being into large. But meantime, my opponent is doing a good job of forcing out the Dark Riders, and the Knights of Blazing Sun charging in are definitely not helping my case. Over here, Malekith continues fighting. He is, of course, going to do rather well against Boris. Boris doesn't have the best combat stats. Malekith has pretty good stats, especially with Stand Your Ground active. He will be able to trade pretty well. But unfortunately, the Dark Riders there are being zoned off, and one unit run off the field entirely is definitely a bit of a disaster. Sisters of Slaughter getting run over by Empire Knights, also not good. And once Murderous Mastery does expire, I'm going to be in a pretty bad position because, honestly, I don't have great tools, really. Without Murderous Mastery, I don't really have great tools to really keep my infantry in the fight, and I'll be pretty susceptible to getting Cycle Charge into Oblivion, despite the Witch Elf Snare. Over here, the Amethyst Wizard is getting caught out a little bit. He is getting whittled down. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get the Witch Elves on him to rampage him into sort of bad position, and that is a little unfortunate. This guy is kind of squeaking away. Malekith, in the meantime, getting torn to shreds over here. Boris popping Foe Seeker. We've got Spirit Leech going down, so definitely some grim stuff. Knights of Blazing Sun doing a lot of work. Malekith, surrounded like this, is struggling. And he is actually going to rout here. So a bit of a disaster there, down to 800 HP. Things that were looking pretty well. For second, Balance of Power was about dead even. Suddenly falls apart. We do get his charge here on the Knights of Blazing Sun, but obviously Dark Riders aren't going to do much. They're going to get terror routed and fall apart. And of course, with the improved splash on the Griffins, it's tough to do much about it. Now, Skirmish Cap has been removed from play. Pistoliers finally chased off, but at this point, Dark Riders are very much whittled down, and the ball is very much on my opponent's side of the court. The Amethyst Wizard has routed, and being on a horse, he will most likely be able to escape. As you can see, he was slowed down by something there. I'm not entirely sure what it was that slowed him down. Probably the mix of poison from the Sister of Slaughter, as well as the Madness of Cain, or the Poison of Cain from the Witch Elves. But unfortunately, he's going to be able to escape. Bit of a disaster there. We do pop a Soul Stealer here with Malekith, trying to heal ourselves up, but Boris does go for the Jugular, flanks around, gets in on our back. Malekith isn't quite able to survive here, and it is going to be game at this stage. She's not going to be able to pull it off, unfortunately. There are some Knights coming back. My opponent doesn't have much left, but he has Boris, and that's really enough, to be honest, at this point. And a handful of spears there. And so it's just a matter of time before we get dragged down. Now, Knights of Blazing Sun there do get dragged down. We do have some archers, or the crossbows, firing in Boris, who's almost hit his healing cap. But really, situation looking a bit grim here. Amethyst Wizard picking off our peripheral troops. There are still some Pistoliers there. Could do some damage if they wanted to. Dark Riders, of course, not the most precise archers by any stretch of the imagination, so kind of whiffing a lot of shots there. And although we are slaughtering these Empire cavalrymen, it is still going to be a significant force left to kick my posterior. And at this point, it is simply a matter of time. You can see I'm trying to group my troops together to make a little bit of bastion here, but Malekith on 800, not good at all. The spears are, of course, going to compromise my line in large part. Just bogging me down, really, is all they're doing there. And although we are going to pop a few shots here at the backs of these Knights of Blazing Sun, whittling them down to almost nothing. And Malekith there does interdict the charge, so cushioning the blow a little bit for the Sister of Slaughter. There's nothing really to rampage Boris. Once these Knights are routed, Boris is going to be able to get in. He dives in. Malekith doesn't really have any defense. He's isolated. Big misplay there on my part, actually getting isolated, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to get terror routed, and it is going to be a game. So, a little bit unfortunate there for sure. Boris there still. We're going to be seeing a little bit of a grind here as we do fight to the bitter end. Dark Riders there tearing down the Amethyst Wizard, but it is simply a matter of time. Now, as Boris does dive in, he gets that rear charge. He's going to be able to break our leadership. Dark Riders there shatter, and valiant defeat for the Dark Elf forces. So, well played to Wayne here. Definitely, I think, a solid Empire build. Not sure how well it would hold up against my more conventional build, which is much more cavalry heavy. Because obviously Cold War Knights trade, especially with no armor, because there's no armor sundering support in this build. So Cold One Knights trade superbly with Knights of the Blazing Sun and Empire Knights, of course, and Dark Rider spam and some Doomfire Warlocks, of course, can be a good disruptive presence. But against this build, it performed rather well. The Hellblaster got insane value, just tearing through my infantry. 73 kills, which is basically an entire unit of Witch Elves or Sister of Slaughter. That's almost paying for itself right there. Plus way more HP damage, gained a Chevron. Just I had nothing to shut it down, really. So that was a big downside here with this build. The skirmishers got quite a lot of value as well, and just in general, I think this cavalry force got a really, really good value. Boris was just devastating, and I had nothing really to punish him, and that was really just a problem for me this entire game. I think a little bit more focus fire with the Dark Riders on the heavy cav could have evened that out a little more if I'd removed the Knights of the Blazing Sun and the Empire Knights a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently. Perhaps I would have been able to squeak things around, because it was a fairly close fight. All that was really left at the end there was Boris, and he was heal capped. But ultimately, just not having anything to snare down Boris, not really having anything to punish the Empire Heavy Cav quickly, was a big killer that match. And really not having backline harass either. You might think, well, I had 3 Dark Riders, but I only had 3 Dark Riders. And my opponent did have 3 Heavy Cav here, so if I tried to flank way in here, wouldn't have worked out probably. And the infantry line did what it needed to do. It held long enough, did enough damage. The Flagellants and the Sigmar Suns, killing 66 units when you think about how expensive this front line is not bad at all. If the only thing they killed here was Witch Elves, and they might have killed some Sister Slaughter and Sister Sing and Doom, these guys already paid for themselves, so that is insane. So really something worth keeping in mind there. That infantry line just got really good value. I think if I was going to try to maintain this build and rework it a little bit, I'd maybe cut some of the Sisters of Slaughter, try to get some Cold One Knights in there. Even one unit, I think, could have swung the things a little bit, just because I would have had something to punish those Knights of the Blazing Sun and bog down Boris a little bit. But definitely not the biggest fan of this build, but I think that against something more micro-heavy, like my Empire build, it actually gave me major difficulty there. I think with good micro, you can definitely punish an opponent rather well. So that could also be a problem, that my micro is just not quite that good. But regardless, well played to my opponent here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. As usual, leave your thoughts, opinions, comments, and critiques down below, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.